Naomi Judd's death shocked the world, but what the autopsy revealed was even more disturbing. And now, her husband Larry Strickland is finally speaking, and what he reveals cracks open a far darker truth. An autopsy marked by scars, a final note steeped in pain, and a silence that allegedly pointed blame inward, toward her own family. Behind the awards and applause was a woman unraveling quietly, while the Judd family fractured behind closed doors. What really happened in Naomi Judd's final hours, and why does this story feel far more disturbing than anyone was prepared for? Keep watching to find out. Naomi Judd was long seen as the face of America's most beloved country music family, warm, resilient, and endlessly smiling. Yet behind that public image was a lifetime of pain few ever witnessed. Her death shocked the world, but what followed was even more unsettling. The autopsy didn't just confirm long-held fears. It exposed details no one was prepared for, raising questions about how a legend could end her life alone, scarred, and leaving behind a note that reportedly placed blame within her own family. To understand why those findings matter, it helps to look at the Judd family itself. Naomi wasn't simply famous. She was the matriarch of a dynasty. Born Diana Ellen Judd in 1946, she worked as a nurse in Nashville before fame arrived. Everything changed when she began singing with her daughter, Winona Judd. Together, they became the Judds, a duo whose blend of warmth and power felt immediate and timeless. From the early 1980s through the 1990s, the Judds dominated country music with hits like Mama He's Crazy, Why Not Me, and Grandpa, Tell Me About the Good Old Days. They sold more than 20 million records, won 5 Grammy Awards, and became symbols of mother-daughter strength. To fans, they represented unity and resilience. Behind the scenes, however, that image was fragile. Naomi and Winona shared a deeply emotional, often volatile bond, strained by fame, touring, and unresolved trauma. Their love was real, but so were the conflicts and long silences. Naomi's relationship with her younger daughter, Ashley Judd, was also complicated. Ashley later spoke openly about a chaotic upbringing and emotional instability at home. At the center of it all was Naomi, a woman who radiated joy in public while quietly unraveling in private. Throughout her life, Naomi Judd battled severe mental illness, including depression, anxiety, and later bipolar disorder. She was unusually open about her diagnoses, speaking publicly at a time when few country artists did. But awareness didn't equal relief. Behind the polished image was a woman in constant psychological pain, one that never fully loosened its grip. In 1991, at the height of her success, Naomi retired after being diagnosed with hepatitis C, a disease doctors warned could be fatal within years. She survived, entered remission, and reinvented herself as a mental health advocate, writing books, giving interviews, and urging others to take emotional illness seriously. Yet even as she helped countless people, she continued struggling privately. In early 2022, Naomi unexpectedly returned to the spotlight. She and Winona announced a farewell tour meant to celebrate the Judds' legacy. Fans were thrilled, but those close to Naomi later said the pressure came at a fragile moment. In the weeks leading up to the tour, she appeared overwhelmed, erratic, and emotionally drained. Then came the shock. One day before the Judds were to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, Naomi Judd was found dead at her home. The autopsy report, released weeks later, confirmed she had taken her own life, but it revealed far more than that. Details about her physical condition, substances in her system, and the circumstances of her death painted a picture far more complex and disturbing than the public ever imagined. The details were difficult to absorb: the precise location of the wound, the old surgical scars, the substances found in her system, and most haunting of all, a handwritten note reportedly addressed to her daughter Winona Judd, one that appeared to place blame in her final moments. Why would Naomi Judd, just hours away from being inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, choose to end her life? According to the official report from the Nashville Medical Examiner, Naomi was found by her family inside her home on the morning of April 30th, 2022. Emergency services were called immediately, and she was taken to Williamson Medical Center, where she was pronounced dead shortly after noon. The following day, she was scheduled to receive one of the highest honors of her career, alongside Winona. The report's findings were clinical but devastating. There were no signs of a struggle or outside involvement, and investigators noted that the scene was consistent with a self-inflicted act. Naomi was found dressed simply with no evidence suggesting foul play. Items from her bedroom accompanied her during transport, reinforcing that her final moments occurred privately, inside her own home. Some of the most surprising details focused not on how she died, but on what her body revealed. The report documented multiple past cosmetic procedures, including a long surgical scar across her scalp consistent with a facelift, smaller scars around her eyes, and cosmetic tattooing along her hairline, eyebrows, and lips. The examination also documented extensive signs of past cosmetic surgery. Naomi Judd had breast implants, a tummy tuck scar running from hip to hip, and linear scars on both knees consistent with earlier surgical procedures. Her nails were carefully manicured with French-tipped acrylics, and her toenails painted a soft pink. Even in her late 70s, her appearance reflected the discipline of a performer who had spent decades maintaining a public image, but the toxicology report revealed a far more troubling reality beneath that polished exterior. Naomi had multiple psychiatric and neurological medications in her system, including venlafaxine, trazodone, primidone, memantine, and MCPP. These were prescription drugs commonly used to treat depression, bipolar disorder, insomnia, seizures, and cognitive decline. Individually, each carries serious side effects. Together, they suggested a complex and potentially destabilizing medical regimen. The presence of memantine raised questions about possible early cognitive issues, while MCPP, a psychoactive compound sometimes linked to medication interactions, can affect perception and emotional control. Taken as a whole, the findings pointed to a body and mind under immense strain, chemically and emotionally. Those details matched what people close to her had noticed in the weeks before her death. Naomi was described as increasingly exhausted, emotionally volatile, and overwhelmed. The sudden return to the spotlight, following the announcement of a farewell tour, may have intensified pressures she was no longer able to manage. What should have been a celebration of legacy instead became another source of stress. Adding to the shock was the reported discovery of a handwritten note near her body. While its full contents were never publicly released, it was widely reported to contain deeply personal language, allegedly directed at her daughter, Winona Judd. For fans who believed the mother-daughter bond, however complicated, was unbreakable, this detail was especially unsettling. Behind the medical terminology and forensic findings was a simple, painful truth. Naomi Judd was suffering. Years of bipolar disorder, lingering health complications, chronic lung inflammation, and the emotional weight of public expectations had taken their toll. The question that lingers most is simple and unsettling. Why then? Why on the eve of a career-defining honor, while preparing for a final tour meant to celebrate a lifetime of work? No report can explain that choice. What the details do reveal is the crushing weight of living in the spotlight, the thin line between triumph and despair, and how a legend can be lost not to scandal, but to silence. For Naomi Judd, that silence left a complicated legacy for her daughter. In the years before her death, the bond with Winona Judd had quietly thinned. There was no explosive fight, just distance. Winona later described carrying survivor's guilt, the heavy, lingering feeling of continuing to live and work, while her mother could not. its grief compounded by unfinished conversations and unanswered questions. Winona has spoken openly about how disorienting the loss has been. She didn't experience one clean moment of goodbye, but a slow unraveling. She has said she sometimes imagines her mother still thinking about the road, the stage, the crowds, things Naomi loved deeply. While Winona has always described herself as more private and inward-focused, she spent decades beside her mother, helping sustain an image of unity even when the relationship was strained. Being a mother-daughter duo, Winona once explained, meant far more than family. They were partners, co-workers, and performers, bound together by success and pressure in equal measure. That closeness, over time, created emotional fatigue neither seemed able to resolve. Today, Winona continues to honor Naomi publicly, singing their songs, speaking about mental health, even completing the farewell tour they planned together. Privately, she has admitted the grief is far messier than anyone sees. The loss didn't bring closure. It brought quiet, confusion, and a profound sense of emotional isolation that still hasn't fully lifted. While the world grieved a music icon, Winona Judd was mourning a mother she no longer knew how to reach. She and Naomi Judd had shared decades of success, breakdowns, hospital visits, and family therapy. Yet when Naomi died, there were still words left unsaid. The loss wasn't just public, it was deeply unfinished. In one of her most emotional interviews, Winona reflected quietly on her grief. She admitted she didn't expect to cry, explaining that being a mother herself now had forced her to look back differently. It wasn't dramatic. Just a daughter trying to understand the woman who raised her, challenged her, and left behind more questions than closure. Just as Winona was struggling to process that loss, tragedy struck again, this time inside her home. Her husband, Cactus Moser, suffered a sudden medical event that left him unable to use the left side of his body. Almost overnight, Winona went from grieving daughter to full-time caregiver. At first, she shared very little, only saying he had lost mobility, an alarming contrast to the energetic drummer fans we're used to seeing on stage beside her. Their life changed quickly. Their home had to be modified, routines rewritten. In a raw moment, Winona described physically holding her husband upright in the shower so he wouldn't fall. "We're supposed to be doing this at 80, she said softly. "Not now." She never framed herself as heroic. Instead, she explained it simply. Survival doesn't wait for readiness. "This isn't about strength," she said. "It's about necessity." A lesson rooted in her childhood, when survival meant working or going without, now returned in a different form, demanding endurance not just physically, but emotionally and relationally. Publicly, Winona Judd kept going. She completed the farewell tour, gave interviews, and smiled for cameras. Privately, her life looked very different, managing medications, doctor visits, and emotional swings, then coming home to a husband who couldn't walk without help. She was still singing on stage, but off it she was caregiving. There was, however, an unexpected turn. Despite his limitations, Cactus Moser refused to stop living. Within months, he surprised doctors by returning to the ski slopes, navigating trails with one working leg. Winona spoke about it with awe. He never said can't, he just went. He didn't want to be protected. He wanted to live. That stubborn resilience mirrored Winona's own. Both had endured loss, public scrutiny, and private pain, and neither wanted to be defined by it. Still, the gap between perception and reality remained stark. Fans saw strength and smiles. They didn't see the exhaustion after shows, the physical labor at home, or the emotional weight of holding everything together. She keeps moving forward, not for applause, but because life doesn't pause for grief. It simply continues. Winona isn't living a fairy tale or a glamorous comeback. She's living a life where love means daily care, intimacy means helping someone stand, and partnership means adapting to a future neither planned. As she put it, it's not the life she imagined, it's the life she has. And that quiet persistence, far from the spotlight, may be the most meaningful chapter of all. There is something especially haunting about silence between sisters, especially when those sisters are Naomi Judd and Ashley Judd, bound by fame, family, and the painful legacy of Naomi Judd. After their mother's death, many expected the two to grow closer in grief. Instead, Naomi revealed a quiet truth. They barely speak. Even living on the same Tennessee property, their lives rarely intersect, not because of a recent conflict, but because distance has always been there. According to Naomi, that divide began early. She left home at 18 to perform full-time with Naomi, while Ashley stayed behind as a teenager in what she later described as a chaotic, emotionally unstable household. Fame pulled Naomi onto the road, leaving little room to maintain a traditional sisterly bond. Even before that, Naomi had been pushed into a role she never wanted, part sister, part caretaker, due to Naomi's struggles with mental illness and instability. Ashley once called her sister mommy, a label Naomi found deeply uncomfortable. The blurred roles created resentment and emotional distance that never fully healed. As adults, the gap remains. Though they share family land, they live separate lives. Naomi is rooted in domestic responsibility, raising teenagers and caring for her husband, while Ashley is single, child-free, and often abroad, focused on humanitarian work and activism. Naomi has described it without anger, only resignation, different lives, different paths, family secrets added to the imbalance. Naomi learned in adulthood that the man she believed was her biological father wasn't, information Ashley had known much earlier. That uneven truth deepened feelings of betrayal and separation. Even after Naomi's death, their public responses reflected the divide. Ashley spoke with composure about legacy and mental health advocacy, while Naomi appeared raw and overwhelmed, still trapped in unresolved grief. There was no single argument that broke them apart. Instead, it was years of accumulated strain, unmet needs, shifting roles, and the emotional weight of growing up with a mother who was both deeply loving and deeply troubled. Both sisters survived that upbringing, but in very different ways. As Naomi once said, they are broken and blessed. The love exists, but so does the exhaustion. And for now, that silence between them remains.